Hello, welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, we're going to be drafting a basic bodice block from scratch. And this tutorial is for absolute beginners. So let's get started. What you'll learn in this tutorial: 1. How to take accurate body measurements. I'll show you exactly which measurements you need. You'll learn where and how to take each measurement correctly to achieve the best fit. I'll guide you through each stage of the drafting process in a simple and beginner-friendly way. Once your pattern is complete, I'll share useful sewing techniques, and by the end of this tutorial, you'll have your very own finished bodice top. To make the process even easier, I've included 3 free PDF downloads: inches to centimeter conversion chart. This is perfect if you're more familiar with metric measurements. Bodice measurement chart. This is a handy worksheet where you can record all your body measurements before drafting. Bodice block diagram. This is a visual reference showing the complete bodice block, helping you follow along with confidence. So whether you are completely new to pattern drafting or looking to improve your skills, this tutorial is designed to help you create a well-fitting bodice block with ease. Now let's begin taking body measurements. Before we start, ensure you're wearing a fitted garment and a well-fitted bra. This will help you achieve more accurate measurements and create a better fitting bodice block. It is also helpful to tie a piece of string around your natural waist. This will clearly mark your waistline and make taking measurements much easier. We'll be taking the horizontal measurements. This is the circumference and the width measurements. And then we'll be taking the vertical measurements. This is your length measurements. For the bust circumference, measure around the fullest part of your bust, ensuring the tape measure remains level all the way around your body. If measuring someone else, standing slightly to the side can help you check that the tape is positioned correctly. Waist circumference. Measure around the smallest part of your waist where you have tied the waist marker. Make sure the tape is snug but not tight. For the hip circumference, measure around the fullest part of your hips, keeping the tape parallel to the floor. Apex to apex measurement, also the nipple to nipple measurement. Take this measurement from the center of one bust point to the center of the other bust point. This measurement helps to determine dart placement and overall fit. Now for the vertical measurements. This is taken from the neck point, which is located where your neck shoulder meets your neck. The shoulder to bust point. Measure from the neck point down to the fullest part of your bust. Shoulder to waist. Measure from the neck point straight down to your natural waistline. Shoulder to hip. Measure from the neck point down to the fullest part of your hip. You can also measure the waist to hip. This can also be calculated, usually between 8 to 9 inches. For the back measurements, the shoulder width, you measure across the back from one shoulder point to the other shoulder point. For the back length, locate the nape of the neck, which is the prominent bone at the center of your neck. Measure from this point down to your natural waistline. When drafting the bodice block, we work with 1/4 of the body. The front bodice represents half of the body and the back bodice represents half of the body. This allows us to create a symmetric pattern. Your paper width should be 1/4 of the fullest part of your body. This can be either your bust or your hip measurements, plus your ease allowance plus your seam allowance. Length of your paper is the full length of your garment plus an additional 2 inches. Now, ease is the extra space added to a garment to allow for comfort and movement. and the seam allowance is the extra fabric required for sewing. Starting from the top of the edge of your paper, measure down 1 inch. This will be your shoulder line. From the shoulder line, mark the following vertical measurements. Chest line, mark this measurement down from the shoulder line. For the bust line, this will be your shoulder to bust point measurement. Waistline is shoulder to your waist measurement. Hip line is shoulder to your hip measurement. Mark measurements on both sides of your drafting paper and connect the points. You should now have your chest line, your bust line, your waistline, hip line, and the center front along the edge. Label each line clearly. To construct the neckline, determine the neckline width by calculating your bust circumference divided by 12. Measure this distance along your shoulder line and square it down. Using a curved ruler or your freehand, draw a smooth curve to form the neckline. To draft the shoulder slope, from the center front edge along the shoulder line, measure half of your shoulder measurement. Mark this point. Repeat the same measurement on your chest line and connect the 2 points with a straight line. The front body slope is 1.5 inches along this line. Measure down from the shoulder point and mark. Connect this new point back to the neckline. This creates the shoulder slope. To construct the armhole, measure the shoulder slope line and locate its midpoint. From this midpoint, move inward by 1/2 inch and mark. Next, on the chest line, measure your bust circumference divided by 4 plus your ease measurement and mark this point. Using a curved ruler, connect the 3 points. This creates your front armhole curve. To create the waist dart, use your apex to apex measurement divided by 2. Mark this point on your bust line, your waistline, and your hip line. Draw a vertical line connecting these 3 points. On the waistline, measure 1/2 inch on either side of the line. This becomes your dart legs. From the bust point, come down 1 inch, and from the hip point, come up 2 inches. Connect all dart points to form the waist dart. The dart removes excess fabric and helps shape the garment to fit the body's curve. On the waistline, measure 1/4 of your waist measurement plus your dart allowance plus your seam allowance. Mark this point. point, and on the hip line, measure a quarter of your hip measurement plus your ease allowance and mark this point. Connect waist to armhole and waist to hip. This creates the side seam and overall silhouette of the bodice. To shape the hemline, measure up 1 inch from the side seam on the hip line. Using a curved ruler, blend this point smoothly back to the waist dart. This creates a gentle curve at the hemline and improves the overall shape of the finished garment. Bust dart intake is the difference between the shoulder to waist measurement for your front bodice and the nape to waist measurement for the back bodice. Subtract the back measurement from the front measurement. The difference is the amount needed for the bust dart. On the side seam, mark this measurement. On the bust line, from the apex point, measure 1 inch away from the apex towards the side seam. Locate the center of the dart and fold the dart close along the center line, matching the dart legs together. Once folded, redraw the side seam so it forms a smooth, continuous line when the dart is sewn. If you have a tracing wheel, use it to transfer the corrected seam shape onto the pattern. If not, simply trace the new line manually. When the dart is open, you will see the completed bust shaping incorporated into the bodice block. Before cutting out the pattern, add seam allowance around the entire bodice block. I have used 1/2 inch seam allowance around the edges and 1 inch seam allowance on the side seams to allow for fitting adjustments. The center front does not require a seam allowance because it will be cut on fold, which means the fabric will be folded on that edge. Carefully mark this seam allowance all around the pattern. Add all necessary pattern markings like the grain line and the name of the pattern. I have also notched the dart leg for easy sewing. Your front bodice block is now complete. Now let's draft the back bodice block. Just like the front bodice, begin by measuring down 1 inch from the top edge of your paper. This will be your shoulder line. Next, along the vertical edge of the paper, measure 1 inch and draw a vertical line. This will serve as your zip allowance and the center back. Label as center back and zip allowance. To construct the back neckline, measure down 1 inch from the shoulder line along the center back. For the width of your neckline, this will be your bust circumference divided by 12. Measure this along the shoulder line. Square out this point and using your curved ruler or your free hand, draw out your neckline. Make sure the front and back neckline widths are the same. This keeps the pattern balanced and ensures the neckline fits together correctly. From the shoulder line, mark the following measurements. Your chest line, this is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 plus 1 inch. Waistline is your nape to waist measurement. Rule these measurements across the width of the paper. And label each clearly. Drafting the shoulder and armhole. From the center back along the shoulder line, measure half shoulder measurements. Mark this point. Repeat the same measurement on your chest line and connect the 2 points. For the back shoulder slope, measure down 1 inch from the shoulder point. Connect this point back to the neckline edge. On the chest line, measure a quarter of your bust measurement plus ease allowance. Mark this point. Next, measure the armhole midpoint. From this midpoint, move inwards by half an inch and mark. Using a curved ruler, draw the armhole by connecting the shoulder point, the armhole point, and the chest line. This forms your back armhole curve. Drafting the back waist dart. This is your apex to apex measurement divided by 2. Mark this point on your chest line, waistline, and hip line. Draw a vertical guideline through this point. At the waistline, measure ½ inch on either side of the center line to create the dart intake. From the chest line, come down 1 inch. From the hip line, measure up 2 inches. Connect these points to create the back waist dart. This dart helps to shape the bodice to fit the natural curve of the back. On the waistline, measure a quarter of your waist measurement plus your dart intake plus your ease allowance. Mark this point. To shape the hemline, measure up 1 inch from the side seam on the hip line. Using a curved ruler, blend this point smoothly back to the waist dart. This creates a gentle curve at the hemline and improves the overall shape of the finished garment. Add ½ inch seam allowance around the edges, except the center back, because we have the zip allowance in place, and 1 inch along the side seam. Carefully cut out the pattern along the outer seam allowance line. Your back bodice block is now complete. Before cutting your fabric, it's important to check and true your pattern pieces. To check the side seams, place the front and back bodice pattern side by side and compare the side seam length. Also check the shoulder seam of the front and back bodies. Check the neckline flows smoothly from the front to the back. Once these checks have been completed, your pattern is fully trued and ready to use. Congratulations, you have now completed your front and back bodice block. Here is a simple and reliable method for transferring dart to fabric. Start by threading a hand sewing needle with a brightly colored thread. With the pattern paper still pinned securely to the fabric, pass your needle through all the key dart points. Leave a generous length of thread on both sides of the calico. Continue until all the dart points have been marked and threaded. Should now have visible thread markings showing the exact location of your darts. Using a tailor's chalk or a fabric marker, connect the threaded points to redraw the dart lines directly onto the fabric. I have used pencil to make it more visible. Once the dart lines have been marked, remove your thread. Fold the fabric right sides together, matching the dart legs precisely. Take the fabric to your sewing machine and stitch along the marked dart lines, sewing from the wider end towards the dart point. Once you've sewn all the darts, it's time to insert the zip. With back pieces right sides together, sew the center seam from the bottom up to the point where the zip will end. Pin the zip in place and sew using a zipper foot. Next, place the front and back bodice pieces right sides together and sew the shoulder seams, followed by the side seams. And just like that, your bodice block is complete and ready for fitting. And here we have it. This is the completed bodice block. Thank you for following along with this tutorial. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe.